growing up as a little kid here in Ojai, that was one of the primary reasons why I spent pretty much every summer exclusively at the beach at a surf camp in Ventura. And I ended up going so many years in a row that eventually I started working there, first as a junior instructor and then as a lead instructor. It was a pretty sweet job for a 16-year-old to have, getting to spend 5 days a week at the beach. And every year we tried to incorporate some kind of new learning into the camp experience. So for example, we'd start taking walks up and down the beach in the mornings before getting in the water, and we'd talk to the kids about basic marine biology, and we'd pick up trash along the way. But eventually I started getting pretty curious about what was under the water over which we were surfing, because I'd talked so much about it, but I hadn't really gotten a good look at it or laid eyes on it. So a fellow instructor let me borrow his mask, and I went for a swim. And what I saw can only be described as magic. Kelp forests, stingrays, crabs, more fish than I'd ever seen in one place before. A whole second underwater world of life with which probably so few people interact. And since then, I've snorkeled, surfed, or spearfished in Central America, the Caribbean, Europe, Southern Africa, the Indian Ocean, Southeast Asia, and the South Pacific. And I've seen some incredible underwater seascapes, from coral reefs to kelp forests, in probably about 20 countries around the world. And I was hooked immediately. I had to learn more about this world beneath our feet, about which we know so little, but which covers 75% of the Earth's surface. Did you know we know more about space than we know about the ocean? One thing we do know is that the ocean produces 80% of all the oxygen on the planet. More than all the trees, bushes, plants, forests, jungles, botanical gardens on land combined. In fact, the oxygen in 1 out of every 5 breaths that you're taking right now comes from a single species of plankton that lives on the surface of the ocean. Are you guys enjoying the weather today? I am. Well, the ocean's also single-handedly the largest regulator of climate and weather of any other biophysical feature on the planet. Without the ocean to absorb solar radiation from space or absorb the heat trapped in our atmosphere because of the greenhouse effect, the average surface temperature of the Earth would be over 200 degrees Fahrenheit, and we'd all burn to a crisp. But luckily, we have it right in our backyard to provide a livable, habitable climate and give us beautiful sunny days like this one in Libby Park. Do any of you garden or farm or grow anything? Well, I'll let you take a wild guess as to where 99% of all the rain on Earth comes from. The ocean. In the form of evaporation, trade winds, clouds, and precipitation, the ocean provides 99% of all the rain on the planet, reaching as far inland as Kansas, Uganda, Bolivia, and Nepal, and allowing us to have agriculture, livestock, and pretty much every other industry on the planet. Now, all these nice things that I've just described collectively are referred to as ecosystem services. These are functions performed by the biophysical world that allow us to have life, the economy, and all of our interactions with each other. Everything from oxygen production to heat absorption, carbon absorption, climate regulation, storm protection, healthy soils, everything the Earth does that allows us to have life and all secondary activity thereafter. And we have the ocean to thank for most of them. So I think it's interesting to consider how much we depend on these marine ecosystem services, but how easy it can be not to make the connection between what I do on land and the health of the sea. Plastics are a really good example. A person in St. Louis, Missouri, pretty much as far away as you can get from an ocean, can litter a piece of plastic. They can travel down the Mississippi River, out the river delta in New Orleans, and spend a lifetime at sea in the Gulf of Mexico or the Atlantic Ocean. But do you think that person in St. Louis ever really thinks about the ocean? Probably not. Even though he or she is directly benefiting from its oxygen, climate regulation, and rain, which allow agriculture and comfy living to prosper in the Midwest. Now, we have huge impacts on the ocean and marine life from land-based activity, mostly as a result of an increased demand for marine resources, poor regulation on industry, and nobody wanting to take ownership of damage to the ocean. But this has resulted in overfishing over a third of the world's fish stocks from demanding unsustainable fishing practices in our onshore seafood industry. Constantly plundering the bottom of the ocean for oil and gas, for our onshore demand of fossil fuels, for our cars and planes, energy and transportation. And maybe worst of all, it's estimated that a dump truck's worth of plastic enters the ocean every minute, and that by weight, by the year 2050, there will be more plastic in the ocean than fish. And when plastic enters the ocean, it's not uncommon to be uptaken into naturally occurring what are called gyres. These are swirling currents of water out in the middle of all major oceans as a result of the rotation of the Earth and warm and cold water currents that create this sort of whirlpool effect. Naturally occurring, always have been. But when plastic enters the ocean, it's not uncommon to get stuck in these gyres because plastic floats. And the whirlpool effect ends up making the plastic just go around and around and around and accumulate, eventually into what are called garbage patches, floating islands of garbage out in the middle of all major oceans. And there's a garbage patch in every major ocean, but the largest one is actually right here in our own backyard, in the North Pacific, just off the coast of Hawaii, called the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, a floating island of trash estimated to be twice the size of Texas. And these garbage patches wreak havoc on marine life, marine ecosystem service production, and often the chemical constituents in plastics, like plasticizers and fire retardants, can biomagnify up the food chain into the very seafood that we buy to eat ourselves, which can be carcinogenic to humans. Studies have even shown that microplastics on the surface of the ocean can be picked up due to evaporation or weathering and redeposited on land in the form of rain. Literally raining plastics, often into our waterways that we use for drinking water, tap water, cooking, bathing, and cleaning. Ladies and gentlemen, we only have the one ocean, and everything we do on land impacts it. But without the ocean, there can be no humanity. So please choose sustainably sourced seafood. Buy and use less disposable plastics and consider lower carbon lifestyle adjustments. And take advantage of the ocean we have right in our own backyard. The Ventura coastline has some of the richest marine life in the entire state of California. So pull up a beach chair, grab a snorkel or a surfboard or a boogie board, and go immerse yourself in the very thing you're aiming to protect. Thank you.